Thanks for tuning in to My Valley, His Victory, hosted by me, Mackenzie Smith, where I interview Christians who love the outdoors and have walked through valleys in their lives. In a world of highlight reels and surface-level relationships, we all have faced hardships. I believe our experiences can be encouraging to others if we have the courage to be vulnerable. 2 Corinthians 1 says, "The Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." My goal is to inspire you to come to the Creator through His creation and connect you with Christians who have been through similar experiences. I pray that this podcast encourages you if you are in a valley and pushes you to share how God has turned your past valley into His victory. If you enjoy these episodes, please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform and follow this podcast on Instagram. If these episodes have been impactful for you, or you know someone that would benefit from one of these episodes, please feel free to share it with a friend. Your support means the world to me. Thanks so much for being here. On today's episode of My Valley, His Victory, we have Dan Becker. Dan Becker lives in Wisconsin and is more than just a name. He is a backpacking extraordinaire and YouTube personality, and one of the most well-known names in the backpacking industry. So excited to have you here today, Dan, and thanks so much for being with us.
Wow, I don't think I've ever had an intro like that ever in my entire life. That was awesome. Yeah, well, fun to be here. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are? We all probably know you through YouTube, but tell us a little bit more about who Dan actually is.
Yeah, I'm so not, I feel like I'm so not anything you said in the intro. I'm just a regular dude that lives in Wisconsin, a dad, 3 kids, and I just happen to film stuff when I go outside and upload it to YouTube. Yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Yeah. So kind of talk to us about how you got into backpacking. I mean, is this something that you've done your whole life? I know you live in Wisconsin, so not, super well-known backpacking state. So walk us through that journey.
Yeah, no, definitely did not do this my entire life at all. I started probably 10 years ago. And we were just like, backpacking is not really a thing in Wisconsin. Like, if you walk around and talk to people about backpacking, they're like, what is that? I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, my kids wear a backpack to school, like that's pretty much what it is. And so we, like 10 years ago, buddies of mine were like, hey, let's go do something fun. Let's do something kind of manly. Let's put on a backpack and go into the woods with, just see if we can survive for the night. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. And so we did that, and I was absolutely hooked. And I spent probably prior to that, I spent probably 30 or 40 hours researching for that night, because I'm like a researcher by nature. So I went on YouTube, started learning, and that was it. That was the hook. And I just started to backpack based on my experience with my buddies, but I had no one to go with because they didn't want to go again. It was just like me, and I didn't know anybody that did it. So I was like, I got to go on YouTube and learn this thing. And that's how I got sucked into the abyss of YouTube. Yeah. So
they don't backpack now, the guys that you went with the first time.
Yep. As a matter of fact, the next time that I got out with both of them ever was last year. They finally came to me. They're like, will you take us on a trip? And I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let's like relive the glory days. And so we went to Wind River Range in Wyoming, and we hiked the Titcomb Basin. And it was a vastly different trip from the overnighter in Wisconsin that we hiked like barely a mile in. So they had a blast. It was a lot of fun.
I love that. That's so cool that you ended up getting to at least have another experience with them, with at least one of you guys having an understanding of what to do.
Yeah, for sure. And they like used all my stuff. Like, they're borrowing everything because I've got pretty much an REI as a gear closet. So it's kind of fun.
Hey, that's not a bad setup to have.
Yeah.
So is this something that I know I see, you out with a lot of different guys and just having the best time, but is this something that you do with your family very often, or your wife, or where are they involved in kind of this world?
That's a super good question, because they were like me. You just don't backpack around here. So my kids, my youngest is 11. And so he's probably had like the most, I guess, the closest thing to growing up with this in his life. My wife didn't. So she's gone with me, I don't know, maybe 5 times. And it's not she doesn't not enjoy it, but it's not like, oh, I can't wait to go backpacking.
Right.
And we just don't live in an area where you do it. And so, and our kids, I got a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 12-year-old now. And so their lives are school, sports, all that stuff. And so, yeah, I'm the backpacker, but they will come with me from time to time for sure. Like my oldest, we're planning a trip to Montana. We'll probably be there at the end of July. We'll hike Beaten Path Trail in your Bob Marshall Wilderness. And so, yeah. Where are you from?
I'm from Kansas originally, but I live in Utah now.
That's right. Yeah. You're in Utah. Yeah.
Yeah. So same. Didn't grow up backpacking at all, but have gotten into it and kind of, like you said, just trial and error.
And now you like walk out your backyard and you're in backpacking territory in Utah. That's awesome.
Yeah. I haven't gotten to do it yet in my backyard. We've driven down to the desert a couple of times and did some stuff. We moved here in January. So snow is still melting. So haven't gotten out in my backyard yet. But yeah, excited to definitely explore more of Utah this summer and the mountainside instead of the desert side. So,
yeah.
So, outside of backpacking, let's go there. What do you like to do? What are some of your other hobbies? I know this is obviously your job now, but yeah, what do you like to do other than backpacking?
What do I like to do other than backpacking? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I guess the second world would be obviously YouTube. Like we live YouTube videos around here. But then I'm a drummer. A lot of people don't know that. I've been drumming for 30 years. So played in like a bajillion bands, traveled all over, played for like a gajillion churches, that kind of thing. And so both my boys are drummers. And so they play for churches and musician. People would probably be blown away to hear that, but yeah.
I love that. Always fun whenever you have that musical talent. I have zero, so kudos to you.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't give me a musical instrument. It will not be good.
Yeah.
Always been into sports and things of that nature. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, no, I do not do sports. Like at all.
Yeah, you do a sport. You backpack. That's a sport.
Yeah, I walk. That's great.
Yeah. So kind of talk to us about how the YouTube channel started. I mean, so obviously 10 years ago you weren't a backpacker and now that's, your thing you love the most and thing you do the most. At what point were you like, I'm going to start making videos? Were they always gear videos or were they more just taking people along on your trips or kind of how did it evolve?
Yeah. So because no one does this around here, I had to learn somewhere. So YouTube is where I learned how to go backpacking, like quickly, right? Like people back before YouTube, just like trial and error. Like you go to buy all the gear, you talk to somebody maybe that knows how to do it at the outdoor store, whatever. So I learned from YouTube. And one day I was trying to figure something out. So I went to YouTube to try to learn how to do something. Well, there was no information on YouTube. So I'm like, oh man, I guess I'm gonna have to figure this out myself. So I figured it out. And then I thought, well, man, I bet you somebody would probably want to know how to do this. And so I'm like, I guess I'll make a video. It's kind of weird. Like I was 40. I'm like, what 40-year-old dude's making YouTube videos? So I made a YouTube video and I put it online and I could not believe that people watched this video. Like it just blew my mind that I got a view. I've got a really addictive personality when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll try to make another one. And I made another one and then people watched that. And I just started that. And I actually didn't tell anybody I had a YouTube channel for a few months. Like nobody knew, like other than the people that were seeing me on YouTube, my family, like nobody knew. Like my kids, they found out when I left the laptop accidentally open.
Oh my goodness.
They were like, Dad's got a YouTube channel.
They were probably like, oh gosh, Dad, what are you doing?
Yeah, dude, it was so bad. I was so embarrassed. And yep. Yeah. That's how it started.
I find that to be really common I feel like in the people that I've talked to in the YouTube space or that have even started any sort of channel, it's like I went and I looked for information and I couldn't find it. And so I created it. And so I think that's really cool.
Yeah. If anybody's looking to start a YouTube channel, that's how you do it for sure.
No, it's so cool. And at that point, I mean, when you were watching YouTube videos, was there anyone who was, I'll say you at that time? Like, who was the person that was making these YouTube videos that you were watching to learn how to backpack?
I think the big YouTube channels back then that were in the backpacking world, and it was very different back then. Like it was, there were very few of, it's weird to say, but there were very few people like me on YouTube, like that were the average dad that were still learning. But there were like the guys who had done it their whole life that, live in Utah or Arizona or whatever. So Darwin on the Trail was the one that I watched quite a bit to learn from. Syntax 77. I don't know if recognize that name. Awesome channel. Loved watching his stuff. Another smaller YouTuber. He's no longer on YouTube, but his name was Tim Watson. I learned a lot from that guy because he was sort of the dad that kind of did this, and but he sort of lived in Ohio, which has a lot more backpacking than Wisconsin.
Interesting.
And I know. And I was just like typing in backpacking stuff. I didn't really care who was teaching me. I just needed to learn. So
very interesting.
Yeah, that got frustrating. That got really frustrating because you're like, I just want to know how to set up this tent, and you're just having to sift through like 100 million YouTube videos before you figure it out. It's like, just give me the tent video. Yeah. But
very cool. Yeah, it's a way different world now.
Totally. Yeah,
I feel like I remember when it all started. Like I remember when YouTube launched and kind of the evolution, and it's a totally different beast now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's no more cat videos.
Yeah. That was my favorite part.
Yeah. Yeah. I miss the cat videos too. We should do that. We should start making cat videos. That's what we're going to do. So forget backpacking. Let's go buy some cats.
So funny. Okay. So obviously backpacking is really awesome. Being outdoors is really amazing. We love it. We both obviously do. Talk to us about how being in the outdoors plays a role specifically in your relationship with Christ.
Oh man, I don't know how anyone can go outside at any point. I don't care where you live, city, country, mountains, desert, doesn't matter where you live, and look around and say that there is no God. It is astronomically insane to me that there's anyone that thinks that. I just can't comprehend that at all. I see creation and the sun and the moon and the stars and the clouds and the mountains and the birds and the animals and everything that's out there. And how can you deny that there's a God that exists? So for me, I feel like it's a tangible, like, everybody's like, hey, God, show up in my life somehow, some way. And they're expecting, this God to like just appear before them. Like, this is the tangible way to have God appear before you. I feel like you get outside and you're like, there he is. He's right there in creation. He's shown himself to us. And so that's sort of my connection to getting out and feeling that. I mean, that's not the only reason I go out, right? Like we all go out just to get away from life in general. But I feel that it is certainly that constant reminder in the storms, in the, the hikes, in the, the struggles of hiking, all of those things is relatable to seeing God in all of it.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I'm absolutely blown away every time I go outside and I see something new and I'm just like, God, you're so creative. Like,
for sure.
You're so cool. No, I couldn't agree more with you. So do you have a story that you could share with us about a time in which maybe God has revealed himself or spoken to you through the outdoors?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think anybody that follows who has followed my journey probably knows about my experience. But yeah, I almost died in the Grand Canyon almost a year and a half ago. I had to get rescued. So we were hiking. We were supposed to do a rim to rim to rim. So we were starting on the south rim, hiking down into the canyon. And then it's about a 25 mile to get out the north canyon, the north rim. And then we were going to hike back, but we decided to do this in winter, and we thought we were prepared. But that year there was massive snow on the north rim, like the week before we got there. As a matter of fact, when I was flying out there, my flight originally was canceled because of the snow, because there was huge snowstorms coming through. So we had to rebook the flight, and the next morning it was just a really kind of a scary situation, but we thought, okay, it's going to clear up. We're fine. If it starts to get bad, we'll turn around. Well, as we were hiking out of the North Rim, about 3 miles up, and this is after already just a pretty grueling hike, we had to put snowshoes on. And if anybody's ever hiked the North Rim of the Grand Canyon, it's a very strenuous hike on a good day. And we were breaking trail, which essentially means that you're the one putting footprints in the snow. There's no one that's been there ahead of you. And we were hiking probably on average 5 to 7 feet of snow the entire 5 miles up out of the canyon that we had to go, 4 to 5 miles. And probably about a mile from the top, maybe a mile and a half, my body just shut down. So like if you've ever watched a marathon race and the racer is running and they collapse, like their body just stops, and then all our other runners will come and help them across the finish line. That's mainly because their body is just like, we're done. Like, you're done. Like, you can't go anymore. There's nothing more for us to give you. And the body is now shutting down. Like, all the energy's gone. That's what happened to me. And it's called rhabdomyolysis. It's where your muscles begin to rip apart and they begin to eat themselves, essentially. And they release a toxic protein into your blood system, which then goes and attacks your kidneys. Because there's nothing left to give. And so,
holy cow.
Yeah, so I collapsed. I shut down. I was able to make it to the top, but it took me like, I could hike maybe 15, 20 feet, and then I would collapse for 20 minutes. I could hike another 15, 20 feet. So it took hours to get to the top. We were supposed to get out at like 5 p.m. and we didn't get out till 11 to hike that last mile. And so when we got to the top, and there's a lot more to the story. I'm just trying to shorten it up for you. But when we got to the top, because I had people helping me to get up there, they set up my tent for me. I collapsed inside my tent. I slept for maybe an hour. Everybody thought I was fine. And then I was just waking up all night long with the most severe chest pains I've ever felt in my life. I thought I was having a heart attack. I didn't know what was going on. They heard me at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. They called for rescue because we had a cell phone signal there. And rescue came. And then I spent the next like 4 days in Kanab, Utah, in a hospital. And so I think through that whole process, I felt like God it was an experience for me to be able to, first of all, be at peace with knowing my relationship with the Lord. Like, because I don't know how many times we question our own faith. Like, okay, God, if I die today, what's going to happen to me? Am I really going to be with you? I felt such peace in knowing that I had a relationship with Jesus, that I knew. I just felt like it was God's way of solidifying that in me. And then also just being able to have sort of that different outlook on life, to where we are 1,000% not promised the next minute. Like, today is not promised to us. The end of today is not promised to us. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. And I'm just so grateful looking back in a weird way that whole experience happened. But yeah, anyway, I survived it. We came out on the other side. It was a long road to get out. I couldn't hardly walk for a solid month. I mean, I had lots of problems for several months. I didn't hike for 4 to 5 months after that. Chest problems, knee problems, but yeah, I've made a full recovery now. It's just, yeah.
That's great.
I don't recommend it. I don't recommend anybody get rhabdomyolysis. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, so thankful that you're okay and that you are doing better now. And such a scary, scary moment. Like, I think we all have worries about going out into the wilderness and then, having something like that you have no idea what it even is or what's going on, or, you thought you were having a heart attack, like, all the things, like how scary. But I know you guys carry, satellites, communicators and things. So even if you would have had cell signal, hopefully you would have been able to get rescued. But
yeah, I mean, we had the cell communicator, and it was, I was actually, that's actually interesting, because you think I'm buying this, device because I'm going to press it in the time of distress. Well, I discovered that my personality is I refuse to press that button. Like, there's no way that I'm going to have somebody else help me out of this. Like, I'm going to help myself out of here. Like, it's just not going to happen. And that pride kicks in. Like, you're everything that like that sort of instinct, like the guy instinct kicks in. Like, I had to hand my backpack to somebody else, like, to carry it for probably a half a mile. And I didn't even want to do that. Like, no, nobody's going to carry my backpack for me. I'm going to carry my own backpack. Like, forget that. Like, I'm not that big of a wimp. Well, I think the discovery is that we all have a point where we break, and my point for sure broke, and I needed that help. And that's another God lesson. I feel like, our breaking points, that God is in our time of distress, when we've hit the rock bottom and we think we've,
Yeah. In our weakness, he is strong. We have to admit we're weak, like, kind of for his strength to step in sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, crazy story. So thankful that you are okay and that you got out safely, and, that you're doing better now. I think, what you said, though, in that about, being at peace and being content with, your relationship. I think a lot of us question a lot of times, like, are we really saved? Like, what's going to happen? I think a lot of us battle with that in some way throughout our life. And so to kind of be in a place where I could die and, like, to just put full trust in the Lord, like, obviously that's not a fun time, but it's a beautiful thing, to do that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I feel like if anybody's ever listening that's had a near-death experience, there's something that takes place where you depending on your relationship with God or whatever. But there was just a moment where I was just like, I think I'm okay with this. Like, there was a moment where I was just like, yeah, I'm okay with this. And to realize that, the Bible says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, was also a very comforting thought that kind of went through my mind, that if it's getting really morbid, but when you die, it's way better than here, because this place is just a blank. This is just like a mist. We're here for just a moment in the span of an incredible eternity. Like, this is like the sliver in the timeline. And 1,000 years from now, we're going to look back on this and be like, what was that? I hiked through the Grand Canyon and that's where it ended. Well, all right, that's cool. I'm here now, So I think those thoughts sort of went through my mind in a weird way. And it sort of turned me into like, yep, I think I'm okay with this. But, God had other plans, right? So now we're back on the other side. And I think it also puts it in perspective, like, okay, the sliver just got a little bit larger. Like, I'm here a little bit longer now. I've got more time. I'm with my family. I have a platform. I've got this YouTube channel. I know that God's got these bigger plans for me. And I think it's time to maybe find out what more God wants to do through me and use me with. And so, like you with your podcast, like, you're doing this whole podcast thing, and it's phenomenal that you've focused on not just the outdoors, but God in the outdoors, because somebody out there is listening, and somebody's going to get hear a message, and they're going to be in heaven one day and be like, Kenzie, I'm here because of your podcast. You know what I mean?
I'm just here to plant the seeds. Cool. I'm just here to plant the seeds.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, that's all good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think there's so much good wrapped up into that. And thank you for the kind words. And I'm excited to see, if that's what's on your heart right now, excited to see kind of how the platform shifts maybe a little bit. And thank you for, one, coming on here and sharing your faith. Because I know I reached out and I was like, Dan, I didn't even know. I was like, I saw one of your videos and I was like, ah. And then, now just blessed to have connected with you and learn a little bit more about you. But would love for you to share some practical ways. I know you live in Wisconsin, not a super outdoorsy state, but some practical ways that people can connect with God through the outdoors without being in these, super grand places, being on these epic backpacking trips, just kind of in their everyday life.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to sound super cliche. I just sort of think like, for me, because I live in a very suburban area. Like I've got houses everywhere. I happen to have a small batch of woods behind my house. So anybody that watches my videos, I use my backyard as like a set for like camping and stuff like that. I film a lot of videos back there. But I love to like if I literally was outside this morning working because that's just what I do. I love to sit out on my deck and just I got my laptop or I got my computer, I got my phone, whatever I'm doing. I try to work as much as I can outside. And I feel like for me, the moments where I can just, okay, I need to stop for a second. I need to turn off my computer. I need to turn off my phone. I got to not take a phone call. I got to stop and I can look around and I can constantly be reminded by looking around and just going, yes, this is another reminder that in this moment, I don't have to be like, God, where are you? You're right here. Because I can look around, I can see you absolutely everywhere. I just think that's so easy for everyone to do. I don't care if you're sitting in a high-rise building right now, or you're on a boat, or you're slaving at work in an office somewhere. If you got a window, peek out it, I just feel like God is everywhere.
Yeah, so true. So true and so good. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so switching gears into the title of this podcast, My Valley, His Victory, would love for you to share a valley or season of wilderness that you experienced and just what God taught you or prepared you for in that season.
Yeah. So I guess we can just kind of walk through this. This is pretty recent, and it's the first time I've shared it like publicly. But yeah, my dad passed away about, let's see, it would have been, today is the June 4th, so almost a month ago. He died on June 10th. And I kind of feel like we're in the valley right now, and I don't know that I can't really necessarily say that we've learned anything yet. I feel like I would love to be that person to be like, have some inspirational speech right now. I don't really have one. I think I'm learning a whole lot right now, because my dad knew the Lord, but very late in life. We prayed for him for years and years and years and years. As a matter of fact, when we found he died of cancer, but we found out that he had cancer back in October. And even then, I mean, I knew that he had been to church and done things and stuff like that, but he's never really vocal at all about it. And I had several conversations with him over the last months, like, Dad, I just need to have peace in knowing that where are you with God? Because we both know this is coming. And it was so encouraging to hear some of the things that he said to me, because he's never been a very extroverted person when it comes to that kind of stuff. And he shared that with me. And I told him, I was like, Dad, we need you to be extroverted right now. Like, I need you to be extroverted with me just to give me that confirmation. And he was. And he shared with me something that I never thought I would hear I'd never thought I would hear him say, which was, he shared the thief on the cross. And he said that even the thief on the cross, when he looked over at Jesus and was like, and he basically was like, scolded the first thief who was like, yeah, if you're God, just save us, get us off this cross. Like, come on, man. Like, if you are who you say you are, like, let's go. And the other thief was like, don't you fear God? Like, this guy hasn't done anything wrong. Look at us. We're the ones that are like hanging up on this cross. Like, and he looked at him and he says, remember me, Lord, like acknowledging Christ. And Jesus just looked at him and was like, look, today you're going to be with me in paradise. And my dad sharing me that story was confirmation that he knew that his life wasn't a bad life. He wasn't a sinful, terrible person, but he wasn't, his relationship with Jesus really wasn't solid up until just a few years ago. But we needed confirmation of that. And so now we're sort of in this learning phase of like just dealing with the loss and kind of where does it go from here? But it's also given me this sort of, again, the sliver of time that I'm here, right? The moment that I'm on this planet is getting a little bit larger still. What am I going to do with it? And I feel like that's just kind of where I'm at in my valley, as you put it.
Yeah. Well, one, I know we talked about it before we hopped on, but just wanted to say, that I'm so sorry. I know that it's still a very new thing, and, I can't relate in any capacity to, the death of a parent. And so don't even want to try to, but just want to share my condolences and just know that I've been praying for you, and just, just praying that God would comfort you guys and your family in this time. I know that loss in general is hard, and it can be even harder when you're not sure, where that person sits with God.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to use the word cool. That's probably not the right word, but what a cool opportunity for God to give you guys the time, from the diagnosis maybe, to be able to have some of those conversations that you may not have had if he would have passed away in a different way. And so I just think that that's very sweet. And I just released a podcast about a woman who talks about a friend who also had cancer and was going through trying to figure out where she was, spiritually as well. And so it's just, I think it's really important what we do with that time, and, how we spend that time, and making sure that he is going to go and spend time with the Lord, and doing, our part in sharing that.
Sure.
And would love for you to just share a little bit more about how to, kind of approach that conversation with someone where you're not sure, where their salvation lies, and death may be, close. Like, what were you doing with your dad in that time? Were you having conversations? Were you guys praying together? Were you reading the Bible together? Like, what were you guys doing as you were preparing maybe for that?
Yeah, no, no, it wasn't like anything, super. I wish it, we weren't like at some church praying together or anything like that. No, he was in the hospital, and it was just conversations. And it was, I think for anybody that's asking that question, right? Like, you're like, especially if it's a friend, like they're not really, it's gotta be in a comfortable setting to where that individual is willing to be open with you. And so in my dad's situation, it was like, he responds very well to text messages, because he wasn't a very emotional person. He didn't like to show his emotions. So he responded more so like via text in weird ways. So I would text him in the hospital, and then when he was in the hospital, we would sit together, and there were just moments that I would look for as the sort of that opportunity to toss in something that may feel uncomfortable, because you really don't have those my family really didn't have those types of conversations growing up. To be able to sort of lob that pitch and see if he swings. He did, because I knew that, when we're not in the room, I knew he was really emotional because he knew he was going to die. And I also knew that having those conversations, as awkward as they are to start, was also that desperate need that he needed to have those conversations with me that he didn't know how to start. And so it was just like, I just came out at one moment. I just felt like it was like the right moment. I was like, Dad, I just need to know how you are with Jesus. Tell me about your relationship with Jesus. Because it's one thing to say that you've got a relationship with a higher power or God, but Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, that no one can come to the Father except through him. What's your relationship with Jesus? Like, that's the reason we can even see God, is because of what he did. And that was the conversation that we had. And it was, they're always short conversations. They were never long conversations, right? They were always like bits and pieces, but it was enough to get that peace in knowing. And so, yeah, looking back on it, I think God, like you're right, like God gave those moments to us. And a lot of people don't get those moments. I'm sorry if you're listening, you didn't get a moment like that where, you don't have that peace that we were given in that time to have that conversation to know. But I think it's a good reminder that we should still ask those questions to people. Like, that's why we have every single day. Like, what is the point of this day, but not to share Christ somehow with someone? Otherwise, this is a lost day, in my opinion, right? No matter how you do it, whether it's through your work, your job, whatever, a podcast, you don't even have to say you could just share it with your life and what you do and your decisions, And I think those are all testimonies. And then in that moment, you can lob that pitch to hope that somebody swings where they are going to have that conversation with you. So,
yeah, I think that's a really good reminder and piece of advice for us to take away is not all of us are given that gift of having that time, and we are not promised tomorrow. And so today is the day. Like, if you have someone in your life that you're unsure about their relationship with Jesus, and I love that you clarified that. Absolutely love that you clarified that, because I think God can be, to some people, it's not a, one definition. And so it's really good to make sure that we're talking and, about the same thing. And I love that you added that in. But yeah, if you have anyone in your life that you're unsure of, today's the day. Like, ask them, lean in, ask some questions.
Yeah, for sure. And what if anybody also if anybody like one guy that I follow on YouTube that I think does this phenomenally. He's just like the expert, and I think he does it in a really biblical way. And maybe some people don't like him, some people do. But his name is Ray Comfort, and he has a channel. Oh gosh, what is it called? If anybody just YouTube Ray Comfort, his last name is Comfort. But he does all these on the street, like, he tells people about Jesus, but he does it the same way every time, where he uses the Bible to show the spiritually blind person that they are not a good person, that none of us are good, that we have sin in our lives, and that we absolutely need a savior, and that the only way to get saved is through Jesus. And it's such a really good, simple, just like anybody could do it type of a starter conversation. If you're looking for like that first step of how to do something like that, I think it's a really cool channel. So I'm just throwing that little shout out there.
No, love it.
A lot bigger of a channel than me, that's for sure.
I love it. And I have actually, I feel like somebody has mentioned him to me recently, and I haven't gone and looked. So now is my time that, it's been mentioned again. I got to go do it. So I will definitely go check that out. Yeah. Anything else you want to share about this season, or just encouragement, or, just anything for anyone listening before we wrap up?
Yeah. I mean, you don't need a YouTube channel. I mean, to do this kind of stuff, you don't need a podcast you don't have to be some public person to, win people to Jesus. Like, you could be like my mom, who was a Christian since she became a Christian when I was born. And she's like, the rock. She's the praying grandma. Okay. My mom is 82 years old, and she's like the grandma that sends me Bible verses every single day. Nobody knows who she is. She sits in her house, but the power of prayer, you can be that person. And I promise you, there are people listening that when we all sit in heaven one day, there's going to be there's going to be me that'll be like, I had a YouTube channel. I told everybody about Jesus. And then God's going to be like, bro, did you meet the praying grandma yet? Because she is a superstar,
Yep.
And you don't have to be some popular person. We're going to be sitting there and meeting martyrs, right? The people that died for Jesus. Like, I don't want to get there by the skin of my teeth. That's for sure. And so I want to be able to lay down a foundation of knowing that I did whatever I could, whether it was a YouTube channel or just talking to somebody at work or whatever it is. But we're all going to give an account one day. We're going to be standing before God, and he's going to be like, tell me what you did with your life. I'm going to let you in, but I'm not too excited about how this all went down.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, Dan, thank you so much for sharing I feel like you shared two, vulnerable stories in this episode, and just for walking us through those seasons and the season that is even still, going on. And so I know that that's a little bit more fresh. And so I just thank you for opening up and sharing about that, and for being on this podcast and just sharing your faith through everything that you're doing. And I know that I'm so thankful to know that, there's someone else out there in the outdoors world that is on fire for the Lord, and always love meeting people like that. So just want to say thank you so much.
You got it. Absolutely. And there's a lot more of them than you think, because a lot of them aren't vocal about it. Mm-hmm. But it's funny. Whenever I talk about Jesus, the comments blow up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we talk a lot about that on this podcast, about that they're out there, but they're like scared to talk about it sometimes, because the outdoor industry can be a little bit of a scary place to be a Christian sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure.
Hopefully, in a small way, trying to normalize that and trying to, let people know that we're here and that we are on fire for the Lord and we love the outdoors, and those two things can go together, and they should go together because He created the world. So anyways, off my soapbox about that, because I have lots of words to say about that. Yeah. Where can our listeners find you if they don't already know who Dan Becker is?
You can find me at, just type in my name on YouTube. Type in how do I set up a tent, and I'll probably pop up. On YouTube, Instagram, same thing. Unfortunately, even TikTok. Okay, and I wrote a course. If anybody wants to, this is a.
You gotta share.
I'm showing if you're listening. Yeah, if you're listening, we're also recording this in video, and I'm showing it to the camera that nobody can see. But I wrote a backpacking course, and if they go to danbeckeroutdoors.com and they want to learn how to do backpacking but not have to sift through a million videos, I just launched it, and I'm super nervous and excited about it all at the same time, and I would love for people to check it out. So thanks for letting me plug that.
Absolutely. No, y'all, Dan is super knowledgeable when it comes to all things backpacking, and I think that is the core whenever people are wanting to get into backpacking, to trust the person that they're taking information from. And so you guys heard it here. He's been doing this for 10 years. He does this as his job, and so knows so much about this topic. And if there's anybody to learn from, it's Dan. So if you guys are interested in backpacking, wanting to get started, definitely go check out his course. You can trust in his knowledge, and that he is a professional, and that he knows what he's talking about. So really important to trust the people that you're buying things from.
Yeah.
So anyways, just thank you so much again, Dan, for being here and for being on this podcast.
You got it. Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of My Valley, His Victory. If you or someone you know are interested in being on this podcast, please email myvalleyhisvictory@gmail.com.